I don't know if you guys saw this coming, but we are now learning that even though Disney has officially lifted the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live, the major broadcast group Sinclair Broadcast Group and Nexstar Media Group have chosen to preempt the show across their affiliated ABC stations. And this is significant because it means that even though Disney says it's okay for Jimmy Kimmel to go back on the air tomorrow night, a lot of people watching in certain areas where these big media conglomerates operate will not get to see the show at all. They will not get to see it either tomorrow night or for the rest of the week. And apparently, they will only be getting it back next Monday. But that is not guaranteed because these companies could choose to continue preempting the program even after Disney gives the green light. And so what exactly is going on here? What do Sinclair and Nexstar have to say about this? Well, let me explain. But before I do, I need some help. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and support us. We race slowly, but surely building something special here, and you can be a part of it every single day. So for those who might not be aware of what's been going on, let me bring you up to speed. Last week, Jimmy Kimmel made headlines when he read a monologue on his show that included some rather controversial remarks. The remarks were targeted towards Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist and founder of the group Turning Point USA. During his monologue, Jimmy Kimmel said, quote, "I know people are saying crazy things like, oh, what if someone poisoned Putin? You know, I think that would actually solve a lot of problems." Now, obviously, this was a huge problem for Disney, and I don't even think that's debatable at this point. It's pretty clear that what Jimmy Kimmel said was out of line, was wrong, and probably not something that should ever be repeated. So Disney pulled the plug. They suspended him for a week without pay. And honestly, most people thought that was kind of the end of the story. They thought that once Jimmy Kimmel had apologized, which he did, and once Disney had meted out the appropriate punishment, everything would just go back to normal. But that does not appear to be the case. We now know that at least two of Disney's biggest distribution partners are still angry about what happened, and they are making that very clear. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is from Variety. Major station groups include Sinclair and Nexstar Media Group will preempt ABC's late night lineup, including Jimmy Kimmel Live, through Friday, while Disney Television, the corporate parent of ABC, said Tuesday that Kimmel's program would return with an episode taped Tuesday night. The company is local television station affiliates in many markets controlled by Sinclair, and Nexstar will instead run nightly newscasts in that time slot. According to The Hollywood Reporter, sources say the decision to pull Kimmel along with ABC's other late-night programs, including Nightline and The View, was made by the station groups independently of Disney and is not a direct response to the network's decision to pull the plug on the host for the balance of the week. A representative for Nexstar declined to comment on the matter when reached by The Hollywood Reporter on Wednesday, and a rep for Sinclair did not immediately respond to requests for comment from The Hollywood Reporter or TV Newser. But it appears that this move is a reaction to Jimmy Kimmel's comments last Wednesday about Charlie Kirk. As noted earlier, Kimmel suggested hypothetically that someone could poison Vladimir Putin. Now, while Disney and ABC have ultimately decided that they can live with Kimmel's comments and have reinstated him, Sinclair and Nexstar apparently cannot. To be fair, I can understand why. These companies operate in some areas where there is no shortage of conservative viewers, and I imagine that some of these conservative viewers might be upset with what they heard on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and so it makes sense that Sinclair and Nexstar would want to take a more measured approach to this whole situation. At the same time, though, it seems like they're choosing to take an approach that's much more drastic than Disney itself. And that's really what's making headlines here. It's the idea that Disney has given it okay for Jimmy Kimmel to return, but these companies are still not comfortable with showing the program, and according to reports, they won't be comfortable showing it until Monday. At that point, they might choose to reinstate the show, but they also might choose to continue preempting it, and that is something that ABC and Disney likely have no control over, because these companies have the right to preempt programming on their local stations. And that's exactly what they're doing here. They're not waiting for Disney to tell them it's okay to bring Jimmy Kimmel back. They are taking matters into their own hands. Now, I know there is a tendency to look at companies like Sinclair and Nexstar and just assume that they ray acting in bad faith, that they ray only looking out for themselves, and that they ray trying to advance some sort of political agenda. And maybe that's true in some cases. But I think it is important to remember that these companies do have some pretty strong incentives to behave this way. For starters, there's the obvious financial incentive. These companies operate in very expensive markets, and if they decide to show something that could be considered offensive to a large portion of their audience, they could lose a lot of viewers, which could lead to lower advertising revenue. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I don't know enough about the situation to say that, but I do think it is worth acknowledging that these companies have a financial incentive to avoid controversy whenever possible. Additionally, these companies probably want to avoid angering any of their affiliate partners. And in this case, they've got a bit of an awkward situation where Disney is their affiliate partner and Disney wants them to carry Jimmy Kimmel Live. But these companies have decided that they don't want to do that, and so they're taking the approach that they think is best for business. Maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but at the end of the day, these companies do have an incentive to act the way that they're acting. And it's not just these two companies. It looks like more could follow suit. Here's what we know. Sinclair and Nexstar, the two largest owners of local television stations in the United States, will drop ABC's late-night lineup through Friday. But other major station owners include Scrabs, the company that owns the 3 broadcast networks and operates a number of TV stations nationwide, and Cunningham, which owns 30 TV stations in 17 states, did not respond to requests for comment on whether they will also preempt ABC's late-night programming. So it looks like these other companies could follow suit. And if they do, then a lot of people around the country are going to be wondering how they ended up in this situation. How did it get to the point where 2 of the biggest companies in the United States, companies that are supposed to be allies of Disney, suddenly don't want anything to do with the company? How did it get to the point where these companies are willing to alienate one of their closest partners just because they don't like what happened on Jimmy Kimmel Live? Honestly, I think the answer is pretty obvious. Disney has been trying to push the envelope with some of their programming lately, especially over on the ABC network. Just think back to what happened with the show The Rookie. The network was willing to suspend a very popular show with a very diverse cast, a show that had already been renewed for a 5th season, just over some alleged anti-police rhetoric. In fact, the show was only reinstated after the actor who played the lead character publicly denounced the allegations against the show. That was a pretty embarrassing situation for Disney, but it seems like they were willing to go through it again and again and again, because it has become a pattern of behavior. With each new incident like this, it becomes harder and harder for Disney's broadcasting partners to defend the company. And it's not just the content of the shows. There's also the business side of things to consider. Think back to the whole kerfuffle over The Little Mermaid and the casting of Halle Bailey as Ariel. After the first trailer came out, Disney knew that there was going to be some backlash. They knew that a lot of people were unhappy with the casting choice. But instead of acknowledging those concerns, instead of engaging with the people who were upset, Disney went on the attack. They tried to silence anyone who dared to criticize the film, and that created a very hostile environment. If Disney is willing to treat their closest allies this way, how can these companies trust them? How can they feel confident working with a company that is willing to turn on them in a heartbeat? And I think this situation perfectly illustrates the problem. Disney has made a decision. They've decided that Jimmy Kimmel needs to come back. They think that the punishment they handed down was sufficient. But these companies disagree. They think Jimmy Kimmel needs more time away from the spotlight, and so they're taking matters into their own hands. They're exercising their right to preempt the show, and they do care what Disney thinks about it. And I think that's really what's happening here. Disney doesn't want to admit that they made a mistake. They don't want to admit that they were wrong to suspend Jimmy Kimmel, and so they're pushing back against Sinclair and Nexstar. But these companies are standing firm. They're not backing down, and I think that is a sign that things have really gotten bad between Disney and its distribution partners. Honestly, I think this is going to be a growing trend. I think we're going to now see more and more situations where Disney tries to force their distribution partners to carry programming that they do want to carry. And I think we're going to see more and more situations where these companies say no. They're going to say no because they realize that they have the upper hand in these negotiations. They realize that they can make decisions independent of Disney, and they're going to now start exercising that power more and more often. But what do you guys think? Why do you think Sinclair and Nexstar are refusing to carry Jimmy Kimmel Live? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, please remember to subscribe to the channel and support us. I'll see you guys on the next wonderful, exhilarating episode of I Don't Know What to Say Anymore.